let's talk now about adding and deleting, or adding or deleting sentence questions. They're kind of two different question types, but they're very similar, so I grouped them together here. It's never going to ask you to. It's not like you do both, right? There's adding sentence questions and deleting sentence questions. Both of them rely on an understanding of how a sentence fits into a paragraph, though. And it's some ideas we've already talked about. Does the sentence support the main idea of the paragraph, right? The same way we wanted to make sure that we're talking about the same idea with dividing paragraph questions, we want to make sure all the sentences in a paragraph support the main point or the claim of that paragraph. These questions may ask you whether or not to add a sentence. They may ask you whether or not to delete a sentence. They may ask you which sentence should be deleted. Or they may ask you where to add a sentence. And we'll talk about all of these options, all these possibilities. So we'll talk about adding sentences first. With adding sentence questions, your task is to determine whether or not a sentence would fit in a particular area of the passage. In order to do this, you need to identify the main idea of a paragraph. What is this paragraph talking about? Will adding this sentence support that main idea? Will it support that claim, or is it irrelevant to what the paragraph's talking about? That's the main task at hand here. Again, pretty straightforward to identify, right? They'll either tell you that the writer wants to add a sentence or that the writer is considering adding a sentence. It'll specifically say adding a sentence, so pretty easy to identify them. The method here. First, identify the main idea of the paragraph that the sentence is being added to. We talked about that back here. Once you've identified the main idea of a particular paragraph, you need to determine if the sentence in question supports the main idea. Now, adding a detail about something that the paragraph mentions is not enough, right? If it says, hang on, I had a really good example. Let me find it. Maybe I didn't. Did I? Okay, yeah. Here's my example. So if the main idea of a paragraph is about how a certain artist made sculptures of animals, right? And it's talking all about their animal sculptures. And the sentence you're considering adding says, he was born in London in 1836. Does that support the main idea? No. It gives you a detail about something that the paragraph is talking about, right? The paragraph's talking about this artist, and it's giving you extra information about this artist, but it doesn't support the main idea because the main idea isn't about the artist, himself. It's about his work. It's about his animal sculptures. So if we wanted to add a sentence to that paragraph, it should be a sentence that talks about the animal sculptures. Maybe it gives examples of different types of animals that he sculpts. Maybe it, talks about how he gets inspiration from going to the rainforest and looking at animals, something like that, right? Sentences in that paragraph should be talking about the sculptures, not just a general detail about the artist. You also want to check the sentences around where you will be adding a new sentence. If there's some type of discussion or transition or relationship that you're going to be interrupting, you probably don't want to add a sentence there, right? If one sentence says, the ocean's wet, and the following sentence says, for example, if you jump in the ocean, you will have water on you. You don't want to interrupt those, right? Because the for example is important in connecting those two sentences together. So you always want to make sure that the place that you're adding a sentence makes sense, logically with the transitions and the relationships that are already in the paragraph. You also want to check for redundancy. There's no need to add a sentence that repeats something that's already been said. Even if it does fit with the main idea, if it's already been said, you don't need to say it again. I think that's a pretty straightforward idea. And if you're trying to determine where to add a sentence, obviously this is important. In addition to that, you can look for hints in the sentence that you're adding and see how those hints relate to other sentences. So for example, if the sentence you're adding talks about how the person that you're talking about went to China in 1992. You can look in the paragraph for things related to that, right? Let's say there's a part of the paragraph that talks about what he learned visiting China. Well, you would probably want to add that sentence before that, right? Because if you're talking about him going there, you would talk about him going there before you talk about what he learned while he was there. Those are kind of the hints, what I mean by hints, right? Based on what it's talking about and based on what different parts of the paragraph are talking about, you can kind of piece together where it makes the most sense to put it. In addition, if it explains something, right? If the sentence you're adding is explaining something, it has to be after whatever you're explaining, right? It doesn't make sense to explain something that hasn't been brought up yet. Just another example of what this last point means. So let's give it a shot. Cat passage again here. Give it a try, pause it, and unpause the video when you're done. Okay, the writer wants to add the following sentence after sentence 13, so this one gives us a location that we're adding it to provide additional explanation. On the other hand, the natural way for most birds to communicate is vocally by the way of the bird song. Should the writer add this sentence here? So sentence 13 is in this paragraph. So let's read this paragraph. We can identify the main idea of this paragraph, and then that information can help us figure out if this should be added, right? If it fits with the main idea, we want to add it. If it doesn't provide evidence that supports the main idea, we don't want to add it. And also we want to make sure it fits in this spot, right? After sentence 13, so we should pay attention to what sentence 13 says and see if it makes sense in that location. The fact is demonstrated more clearly when observing households that have only one cat. An only cat is usually very vocal since the only creature around with whom the cat can communicate is its owner. Cats with other feline companions, though, are much quieter. If they want to have a conversation, they need only go to their fellow cats and communicate in their natural way. Okay. So this paragraph is talking about how vocal only cats are versus how vocal multiple cats are. Okay. The main idea being that, only cats are more vocal. So the sentence that we are potentially adding, on the other hand, the natural way for most birds to communicate is vocally by the way of their bird song. Well, that very obviously does not support the main idea of this paragraph, right? Not only does it not support it, it's completely unrelated. This whole paragraph is about cats and comparing cats that live alone versus cats that live with other cats. This is about birds. It's not even about the same type of animal. So right away, I think it's very obvious that we do not want to add this. Unless there's a yes that has a really, really compelling reason, this does not fit in with this paragraph. So let's take a look at our answer choices here. Yes, because it shows that cats are truly unique in communicating non-verbally. No. I mean, maybe it does that, right? Maybe, but that's not related to what the paragraph is trying to do or what the passage is trying to do. So even if it does accomplish that, that's not a reason to add it because we don't care about that. That's not what's going on in the passage. B, yes, because it adds a relevant and enlightening detail about another animal. Again, sure, it does add a detail about another animal, but it's definitely not relevant. And just because it adds more information doesn't always mean it's good information, right? More information isn't always good information if it's not related to the purpose of the essay or the main idea of the passage. So we're left with 3 no answers here. C, no, we should not add it because it merely repeats information given earlier in the essay. Well, we know from our skimming that's not true. It does not repeat information, right? Nowhere in this passage does it talk about birds. D, no, because it does not contribute to the development of this paragraph and the essay as a whole. Yeah, that seems really good. It's not related to what's going on here, right? It's not furthering the point of the passage, nor is it furthering the point of the paragraph. So D is probably going to be correct. E says no because it contains facts that are unverifiable by modern science. No, I mean, this is definitely something modern science can handle. So D is the correct answer here. No, it's not related. And reasoning like this, it does not contribute to the development of the paragraph and the essay as a whole, is going to be correct reasoning a large portion of the time. The same way we talked about how in dividing paragraph questions, answer choices that say signals an essay's shift in focus, that's pretty good. Same idea here, right? Something that talks about whether or not it contributes to the development of the paragraph or whether or not it supports the main idea of the passage, those are really kind of the answer choices that are going to be correct a lot of the time. Not every time, but a lot of the time. Let's try another one. It's the Hurston passage again. Give this one a shot. This one's talking about location more than whether or not it should be added. Yeah, give it your best shot. Unpause when you are done. And actually, I should also say, it is also asking about whether or not, right? Because E is do not add the sentence. So it's asking about both. I don't know if you got that tidbit or if you paused it already, but yeah. Okay. The writer wants to add the following sentence to the third paragraph to provide additional explanation. Right? Third paragraph. The sentence is, Billie Holiday's music evokes such feeling and melancholy that it's no wonder she became so popular. Where would the sentence be best placed? All right, let's read that third paragraph. Hurston began her undergraduate studies at Howard University, but her obvious intelligence and talent soon earned her a scholarship to Barnard College in New York City. Moving north in the 1920s thrust her into the midst of the Harlem Renaissance, a black cultural movement that spawned exceptional achievements in literature, art, and music. Interacting with the likes of Langston Hughes, W.E.B. Du Bois, Billie Holiday, and Duke Ellington, Hurston developed her skills as a writer and published numerous short stories and poems. The most influential work that came to define her career grew out of her attempt to capture the black experience. That novel, called Their Eyes Were Watching God, traced 3 generations of a family living in Eatonville. Her authentic representation of the Southern dialect caused her Harlem Renaissance contemporaries to belittle the work for what they saw as propagation of inaccurate stereotypes. Hurston, however, remained true to her project, convinced that the accuracy of her representation would ultimately prevail over the political pressures her peers sought to inflict upon her. So we already divided this paragraph, but I guess for the sake of this question, we'll pretend it's all one paragraph. And the main idea of this one paragraph is all about Hurston, right? It's talking about how the Harlem Renaissance influenced her, and then it's also talking about her one work, Their Eyes Were Watching God, and kind of the reception to that work. The sentence we want to add is that Billie Holiday's music evokes such feeling and melancholy that it's no wonder she became so popular. I am immediately thinking E is the correct answer choice here, because this has nothing to do with this. It has nothing to do with this paragraph. This paragraph is all about Hurston. Billie Holiday is mentioned once as an example of someone that she interacted with, and is only really mentioned as like a plot device, right? Billie Holiday is not what this paragraph's about. So immediately, I think E is correct. But let's check each of these areas and just kind of see how they would work. So before sentence 6, Billie Holiday's music evokes such feelings and melancholy that it's no wonder she became more popular. Hurston began her undergraduate studies at Howard University. So definitely not that, right? We're not going to start off this paragraph by talking about Billie Holiday and then immediately talk about Hurston. After sentence 6, Hurston began her undergraduate studies, Barnard College, New York City, moving north in the 1920s. All right, so we're interrupting that with Billie Holiday's music. No, right? We're not talking about Billie Holiday at all in that part of the passage. After sentence 7, so after sentence 7, no, moving north, again, we haven't talked about Billie Holiday at all yet. So no. And then after sentence 8 is the only place it would potentially sort of kind of fit. Right, because we've said interacting with the likes of Langston Hughes, W.E.B. Du Bois, Billie Holiday, and Duke Ellington, Hurston developed her skills as a writer and published numerous short stories and poems. So we mentioned Billie Holiday. Now saying Billie Holiday's music evokes such feeling and melancholy, it's no wonder she became so popular. This is where it would, if we had to add it somewhere, where it would make the most sense. After we've mentioned her, giving more information about her, fine. But no, it just isn't relevant at all. Because we're not mentioning Billie Holiday for the sake of talking about her. We're mentioning Billie Holiday for the sake of talking about Hurston. So E is the correct answer. We do not want to add this sentence. It does not fit into this paragraph. along the same sort of lines, the same sort of thought process we have deleting sentence questions. It's the same task pretty much, right? Determine whether or not a sentence fits in a particular area of the passage, and we still need to identify the main idea of the passage. It's going to ask us to delete a sentence, or whether a sentence should be deleted, or which sentence should be deleted. And the method's very similar. Determine if the sentence supports the main idea of the paragraph. If it doesn't, delete it. Determine if the sentence has a logical relationship with the sentences around it. If it doesn't, delete it. Determine if the sentence is redundant. If it is, delete it, right? It's the same things we're looking out for when adding a sentence. If a sentence is expressing a claim or providing evidence to support a claim, it should never be deleted. If it is doing something important, right, we want to keep it. If it's doing those things that we learned are really good to do in our writing, back when we were talking about free response questions, those are the types of sentences we should keep. Let's give it a shot. Cat passage again. Do your best, unpause when you're done. Okay, the writer wants to delete sentence 6. Should the writer make this change? So we'll take a look at sentence 6, but we also need to know what's going on in this paragraph in order to decide if we want to get rid of sentence 6. When communicating with each other, cats' talk is a complex system of nonverbal signals. In particular, their tails, rather than any kind of speech, provide cats' chief means of expression. They also use physical contact to express their feelings. With other cats, cats will use their voices only to express pain. Incredibly, all of that changes when a human walks into the room. Cats use a wide range of vocal expressions when they communicate with a person, from affectionate meows to menacing hisses. Since cats' verbal expressions are not used to communicate with other cats, it's logical to conclude that cats developed this language expressly to communicate with their human owners. So again, this is a paragraph that we've split. But it's talking about the ways cats communicate and how they communicate with each other versus how they communicate with people. And at first glance, it seems like we shouldn't delete this sentence because it is supporting the main idea here, right? Cats will use their voices only to express pain. So it's giving us information about the only time that they use verbal signals, which supports the main idea about how when they're with other cats, they mostly use nonverbal signals. So I'm leaning towards holding on to it. But again, right, I can be persuaded by the reasoning. I'm not going to ignore the ones that say to delete it, because if the reasoning makes the most sense, okay, sure. Let's see. A says, yes, it should be deleted because it expresses an idea already mentioned somewhere in the elsewhere in the essay. Well, no, that's not true. So we know it's not A. B, yes, because it is only another repetitive description of the ways in which cats communicate non-verbally. Okay. Repetitive in that it's repeating something that's already been said. Well, it is another description of the ways in which cats communicate non-verbally. However, well, actually it isn't, right? It's one way in which they communicate verbally with other cats. So that's not even true. But even if it wasn't true, it's not necessarily repetitive because it's providing a different example than the previous examples. So not A, not B. So looks like we're keeping the sentence. Again, we have to find the correct reasoning though. So C, no, because it provides an important exception to the general trend described in this paragraph. Okay, yeah, I think that could make sense. It does provide an exception, right? Because up until this point, it's all talking about non-verbal ways that they communicate. So I think C could be correct here. And it is an important exception, right? Because it's, it would be misleading to say that they only communicate non-verbally. So they're kind of pointing out there is one case in which this is different. So C, I think, is probably good. D, no, because it provides a brief summary of the information contained in the essay up to this point. No, it doesn't do that. And E, no, because it is the only time that pain is mentioned in this essay. Well, I don't know. I don't remember if that's true right away. It might be true. But that's not a reason to keep this sentence, right? We're not going to keep this sentence because it's the only time that pain is mentioned. Pain is not important here. The important part of the sentence is that it's giving one way that they will use their voices around other cats. The fact that it's to express pain is not the important part. C is going to be the correct answer here. Provides an important exception to the trend described in the paragraph. Let's try one more. This, I think, is a new passage we haven't seen yet. So you might want to skim this one. And then this question asks us not whether or not we should delete a sentence, but which sentence could be removed. So we have to delete a sentence. Which one of these can we delete? So this is going to require us to check multiple parts of the passage, maybe even, multiple paragraphs. Give it a read, or give it a skim rather, and then try to figure out this question. Okay, so sentence 2, 5, 6, 7, and 14, it looks like we're going to have to read paragraphs 1, 2, and 3 in order to figure this out. So let's go one at a time here. Let's read paragraph 1 and then look at A. Then we can read paragraph 2 and look at B, C, D. And then we can read paragraph 3 and look at E. One guitarist and saxophonist, Bruce Diamond, recorded nearly 100 songs from his home in Lexington, Kentucky. Recently, hundreds of these rough recordings have been remastered. They have captured the attention of musicologists for a number of reasons. So sentence 2, recently hundreds of these rough recordings have been remastered. No, I don't think we can delete that. It is providing more information about what's guitarist and saxophonist percent recording 100, recently 100 recordings been remastered. Okay, yeah. No, it's providing more information about what happened to the recordings that he did in his home, right? After they were kind of discovered, they were remastered. And because they were remastered, they've captured the attention of musicologists. So, no, sentence 2 is important here. It's not redundant, right? It's not irrelevant. We need sentence 2. First, it is possibly apparent that Diamond's songs were influenced by many different popular artists of the day. One song sounds very similar to a complicated jazz song by Charlie Parker. However, another song is the opposite. The song sounds like the straightforward rock of Buddy Holly. The lyrics are very similar as well, and one is led to wonder what inspired them. One music critic observed that Diamond found it completely effortless to switch back and forth between very different musical genres. Okay, sentence 5. One song sounds very similar to a complicated jazz song by Charlie Parker. No, we definitely can't delete that. It is providing evidence for this claim, right? It is giving an example of how it was influenced, and it also is directly related to sentence 6 because of that however, right? However, another song. So we definitely need 5. And 6, I think we also need as well because it is providing another example. And we need this example because later in the paragraph, it talks about how she switches between different musical genres. So we need an example of a second genre in order for that to make sense. So 5 and 6 have to stay. 7, the lyrics are very similar as well, and one is led to wonder what inspired them. 7 is commentary almost. 7 is kind of connecting these examples that were given to the idea about it being influenced by many different popular artists of the day. So I think of the ones we've read so far, 7 is the one that could be eliminated most likely. However, I really don't want to because it's commentary, right? Commentary is important. So if sentence 14 is really important, then I think D is probably the answer. But as of right now, I'm going to go ahead and say, even without reading it yet, sentence 14 is probably the correct answer, and we can find out for sure when we get there. Diamond's recordings are noteworthy for their unique artistic voice, an interesting combination of jazz, bluegrass, and gospel styles. In one piece, Diamond starts with a long, soulful intro leading into an upbeat verse. The verse's tempo and tone provide an interesting contrast to the mournful opening. The chorus combines elements of both in an unexpected but balanced way. Diamond seems to express in this song that he has overcome some emotional wounds, but that he remains conflicted. We have all experienced sad events and know very well what it is like to feel conflicted. Yeah, it's E. This sentence is not necessary. It does not further the argument or the point about Bruce Diamond and the music that was found and his different musical genres and whatever else. It is a meaningless, completely meaningless sentence. We have all experienced sad events and know very well what it is like to feel conflicted. Yeah, obviously, right? That's not something that needs to be said. It's not talking about Diamond. It's not giving more information about his music or anything like that. It's just unnecessary. So that is definitely the one, right? All of these, we observed a particular purpose they were serving. 14 serves no purpose. There is no reason. It does nothing for the passage. So that is going to be the one that we delete.